The Grand Hall of Lumerus was a place where voices of many worlds gathered. The ceiling stretched high above, filled with lights that shimmered like stars. Walls were carved with symbols of countless alien cultures, each mark telling of old wars, trade, and peace treaties. Creatures of many shapes and colors filled the seats, their eyes glowing, their wings folding, their scales shining. Every species came to show strength and claim influence. Among them sat a group of humans. They were few in number, and many aliens did not even look in their direction. For most, humans were newcomers, a small species from a distant planet, barely stepping into interstellar politics. They were called weak, fragile, and unimportant by those who measured power only by size or weapons. Yet the humans sat upright, watching everything with sharp eyes. At the front of the human group was Darren. He was not tall compared to the aliens around him, yet there was a calmness in his face. His uniform was plain compared to the jeweled robes of other envoys, but he wore it with pride. He knew many in the hall thought humans had no right to be here. He also knew that silence and patience could sometimes speak louder than anger. The meeting began with the sound of a deep gong. Leaders from the great powers stood and presented their matters. Some demanded more trade routes. Others spoke of border disputes. A few asked for new defense treaties. The air was heavy with words of rivalry, warnings, and promises. Each speech was met with applause, nods, or mutters of disagreement. The humans waited. They were not yet given the chance to speak. It was clear they were considered observers, not real players in this great game. Darren sat still, but inside he wondered if humanity would always remain in the shadows of giants. Then came a moment of silence. The crowd turned as Lady Vera rose from her place. She was a noble of the Lumerian people, a race respected across the stars. Her presence commanded the room. Tall and graceful, with skin that glowed faintly silver, she wore a gown that seemed woven from light itself. When she moved, her steps were soundless, and her voice carried with a melody that could silence even the loudest alien. "Honored leaders," she began, her voice echoing through the hall, "we gather here to decide the future of our worlds. But too often, we measure worth by force, wealth, or the weight of armies." The hall grew still. Many leaned closer, for Lady Vera's words were never wasted. Darren listened carefully. He had heard of her reputation as a thinker, one who saw more than most. She spoke of unity, of the strength found not in weapons but in will. She reminded the gathering that even the smallest light could guide in the darkest void. Her speech was calm yet powerful. Some nodded in agreement, while others frowned, not liking the direction of her words. Then, in a sudden turn, her eyes swept across the hall and stopped on Darren. The gaze of Lady Vera was like a beam of silver fire, direct and unshaken. "If only you were my husband, human," she said clearly. The hall froze. Every whisper, every movement stopped. Silence spread, deeper than before. For a moment, no one knew how to react. Darren's heart pounded. He had faced alien officers, traveled through hostile systems, and survived dangers unknown to Earth. Yet nothing had struck him as sharply as these words. His eyes widened, but he held his seat, not daring to move or speak. Across the hall, aliens gasped. Some let out low growls, others hissed, and a few simply stared in disbelief. A noble of the Lumerians, admired by many, had spoken of a human in such a way. It was not only personal, but political. Whispers began to rise like a wave. Did she truly say that? A human? Impossible. Unthinkable. The noise grew, each word bouncing through the chamber. Darren sat in silence, feeling the eyes of the galaxy pressing down on him. Lady Vera remained calm, her silver glow steady, her expression unreadable. She had said what she wanted to say, and she did not take it back. The gong struck again to restore order, but the hall was no longer the same. The words of Lady Vera had broken the calm of politics and started something far greater. For Darren and for all of humanity, nothing would be the same after this day. The great hall of Lumerus remained heavy with silence. The echoes of Lady Vera's words still hung in the air, and no one seemed able to breathe. The leaders of mighty species, who moments ago spoke with confidence and pride, now stared in disbelief. The idea of a noble of such high standing speaking to a human in this way was beyond imagination. Darren could feel the weight of countless eyes on him. He had been trained to hold his ground in the presence of powerful figures, yet nothing had prepared him for this moment. His hands tightened on the table before him, his face calm though his heart beat fast. He dared not speak, for any word might shatter the fragile silence. Then came the sound of murmurs, soft at first but quickly spreading like fire. Alien tongues whispered, clicked, growled, and buzzed. Some voices carried disbelief, others anger, and a few curiosity. The statement of Lady Vera was not just a personal remark. In this hall, every word carried meaning, and every meaning carried consequences. On one side, a tall warrior species with armored skin rose to its feet. Its voice rumbled like thunder. A human? You lower yourself with such words, Lady Vera. Their kind has no strength, no history among the stars. They are children who walk where giants tread. Others joined, shaking heads or waving their hands in disapproval. Yet there were also quiet figures who leaned forward, intrigued. They wondered if Lady Vera had seen something they had not. Lady Vera herself stood still, her silver glow calm, her face unshaken. She looked across the hall, her gaze steady. My words are not spoken in jest, she said, her voice carrying clear and sharp. I see value where others are blind. I see spirit where others see weakness. The hall roared with voices once more. Some shouted in protest, others demanded explanations, and many laughed in disbelief. Yet her tone held firm, as though she had already weighed the storm and accepted it. Darren sat frozen, unsure if speaking would only worsen the chaos. Inside his mind, questions clashed with one another. Why had she chosen him? Why had she said such words in public? He had come as a quiet envoy, not a figure to be pulled into the center of the galaxy's attention. The council leader struck the gong again, the deep sound echoing to calm the uproar. Order, the leader declared, order must return to this chamber. Lady Vera, your words will require explanation. Human envoy Darren, you will remain silent until such explanation is given. The gong's sound lowered the voices, but tension still ran through the air like a charged storm. Darren lowered his gaze, respecting the order, though every instinct told him to demand answers. When the session ended, the hall emptied with a storm of whispers. Leaders left in groups, some shaking their heads, others speaking rapidly among themselves. The humans moved together, uneasy at the sudden spotlight cast upon them. As Darren walked the corridor outside the chamber, he felt a presence beside him. Lady Vera walked with calm grace, her silver glow lighting the dim passage. Her guards stood at a distance, giving her space. Walk with me, she said softly, her voice different from the strong tone she had used in the hall. Darren hesitated but followed. His steps echoed on the polished stone floor, his thoughts restless. He could not understand why a noble of her rank had spoken in such a way. When they reached a quiet chamber, Lady Vera stopped and turned to him. Her silver eyes held no laughter, no jest, only a steady seriousness. "You are wondering why I spoke those words," she said. Darren nodded. "You put me in the center of a storm. You made me a symbol without my choice." "Why?" Her gaze softened, though her voice remained firm. "Because the galaxy measures power by force and fear. But I see a strength in your kind that is not yet understood. Your species is new, yes, but not weak. You endure. You adapt. And in you, Darren, I see that truth clearly." Her words carried no mockery. She spoke as though she had thought deeply and chosen her path. "You could have spoken of respect without saying what you did," Darren replied, his voice steady. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Respect alone is ignored in the Hall of Giants. But a declaration that cannot be ignored will force them to see you. Now they must measure you not as shadows, but as equals." Darren stood in silence, his heart torn between caution and curiosity. He understood now that her words had been both shield and weapon. Yet he also saw the risk. For in lifting humanity up, she had painted a target on him, and perhaps even on Earth itself. Lady Vera stepped closer, her silver glow casting a gentle light. "You are more than they believe. That is why I spoke. The days ahead will test you, but remember, storms can also clear skies." Her words lingered, filling the quiet chamber. Darren knew his path had changed forever. The eyes of the galaxy were now upon him, and nothing could return to how it once was. The next day, the Hall of Lumerus was no calmer than before. If anything, the storm of Lady Vera's words had grown louder. Throughout the corridors, alien envoys gathered in circles, their voices sharp with debate. Some spoke of insult, others of curiosity, and a few whispered of danger. The name of Darren, once unknown to most, was now repeated in every corner. When Darren entered the hall with his fellow humans, he felt the change immediately. Heads turned. Eyes followed him. Some alien envoys narrowed their gaze, their expressions cold. Others simply studied him, as though weighing a puzzle they did not yet understand. The council leader struck the gong to begin the session. One by one, envoys stood and voiced their thoughts. A scaled creature with golden eyes hissed across the chamber. "Lady Vera's words are a break of tradition. To bind with a species not yet tested is folly. Humans have not faced the trials that prove worth." Another envoy, with wings folded against its back, spoke with calm but sharp tone. "Perhaps the noble lady seeks to use humans for her own gain. If that is so, the council must watch closely." The accusations spread like sparks. Some feared Lady Vera's declaration was a scheme to shift power. Others worried it might give humans influence they had not earned. The tension grew heavy, pressing on the air. Lady Vera stood to answer. Her silver glow shone brighter as she spoke. "My words were not meant to break, but to awaken. For too long we have measured worth only in strength of arms. Yet I have seen a strength in humans that is unlike any other. They face worlds harsher than ours with no fleets to protect them. They endure storms, hunger, and war, yet they rise again. That is not weakness. That is spirit." Her words silenced many, but not all. A towering envoy with armor like skin leaned forward, its voice like a hammer. "Then let them prove it. If humans truly carry such spirit, let them show it before the council. Words mean little without proof." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. The demand hung in the air, heavy and unavoidable. Darren felt his pulse quicken. He had not asked for this test, yet it was being laid before him. He glanced at his fellow humans. Some looked uneasy, others angry, but all waited for him to act. When the gong sounded again, the council leader spoke. The demand is fair. If humanity seeks respect among the stars, it must be earned. Trials will be set. Human envoy Darren, you will stand as your people's choice. Do you accept? Every eye turned to him. The moment felt endless. He could refuse, but that would brand humans as cowards. He could accept, though he did not yet know what trials awaited. Darren rose slowly, his voice calm but clear. If the council requires proof, then I will stand. I will not claim strength greater than others, but I will show that humanity does not break. A wave of whispers filled the hall. Some aliens laughed softly, others nodded in respect. Lady Vera's silver eyes met his, and for the first time, Darren thought he saw relief in her gaze. When the session ended, Darren walked out of the hall with heavy steps. His fellow humans surrounded him, their faces full of questions. Why did you agree? One asked. You do not even know what they will ask of you. Darren stopped and looked at them. If we refused, they would say humans hide from challenge. If we step forward, they will have to see us. I do not know what trials will come, but I know we cannot remain in the shadows forever. Later, in a private chamber, Lady Vera came to him again. She moved with quiet grace, her glow softer than before. You have accepted. That alone will change much. But the path ahead will be hard. They will test not only your body, but your mind and your will. Darren nodded. I understand. You chose your words carefully in the hall. You knew this would come. Her lips curved in the faintest smile. Yes. But I also knew you would not refuse. Your kind has a way of stepping into storms when all others hide. That is why I spoke. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. Outside, the voices of the council still rose and fell, planning what trials would be placed. Inside, Darren stood with the weight of his people on his shoulders. He had not chosen this path, but it was now his to walk. The galaxy had demanded proof, and he would give it. Whatever came, he would show them what it meant to be human. The decision of the council spread quickly through the halls of Lumerus. Every envoy carried the news back to their own people. Word of the human challenge traveled across the stars, carried by whispers, messages, and broadcasts. Soon, whole worlds spoke of the strange event, a single human chosen to face trials before the Council of Powers. Darren walked through the wide corridors with steady steps, though inside his thoughts turned heavy. The weight of Earth pressed on his shoulders. He knew that failure would not be seen as his alone. If he fell, the whole of humanity would be marked as weak and unworthy. When he returned to the human quarters, his companions gathered around him. They were scientists, diplomats, and explorers, each wearing expressions of concern. One of them, Myra, stepped forward. Her voice was calm but urgent. Do you understand what this means? If you fail, they will say all of us are not ready for the stars. Darren nodded. I know. But if I refuse, we will be cast aside anyway. At least this way, we have a chance. Another human, Tamash, leaned against the wall, arms crossed. A chance, yes, but at what cost? We do not know their trials. They could demand the impossible. Before Darren could answer, a soft glow filled the doorway. Lady Vera entered, her presence commanding silence. She looked at the humans, then at Darren, her silver eyes calm but serious. The trials have been chosen. You must be ready. The humans exchanged uneasy glances. What are they? Darren asked. Vera stepped forward. The council has agreed on 3 trials. The first is of endurance. You will be placed on a harsh world, where the land itself will test your strength. The second is of mind. You must solve a challenge of logic and diplomacy, one that has broken many before you. The third is of unity. You will face a conflict between 2 rival groups, and you must bring peace where none believe peace can be found. The room fell silent. Myra whispered, "They mean to break you. No one species can master all 3. This is designed to prove failure." Darren's gaze did not waver. "Then I will not fail. I may not be stronger, faster, or wiser than all of them, but I am human. We survive what others believe cannot be survived." Lady Vera studied him for a moment, then gave a faint nod. "That is why I chose to speak. You carry a flame that others do not see." For the next days, Darren prepared. With the help of his team, he studied the conditions of the trial world, a desert planet with burning heat and endless storms. He trained his body as best as he could, running, climbing, and testing his limits. He studied puzzles and tactics, rehearsing possible challenges of the mind. He even practiced negotiations, though he knew nothing could fully prepare him for the final trial. At night, when the training ended, he often found himself alone in the quiet halls. There, Lady Vera would sometimes join him. She offered no false comfort, only truths. "Many will wish to see you fail," she told him one evening. "They fear what humanity might become if you succeed. But there are also those who hope. Do not forget that." Darren listened, drawing strength from her words. He began to understand that she had not only spoken for herself but for something greater. By tying her fate to his, she had placed herself against many of her own kind. Yet she showed no fear. Finally, the day arrived. The great hall was filled once more, the voices of countless envoys rising and falling in expectation. The trials would begin before them, each challenge recorded and witnessed. Darren stood at the center, wearing only a simple uniform, no grand armor or weapon. He felt the eyes of giants upon him, some mocking, some curious, and a few quietly respectful. The gong struck, deep and resonant. The council leader's voice filled the chamber. "Human envoy Darren, you have accepted the challenge. 3 trials shall decide whether your kind has a place among us. Endure the storm, master the mind, and bring peace to rivals. Succeed, and your people will be seen. Fail, and humanity will return to the shadows." Darren raised his head, his voice steady. "I will face what comes." The hall grew silent once more. Lady Vera's silver eyes met his across the chamber. In that moment, Darren felt the weight of the galaxy, but also the fire of his people. The trials had begun. The trial world was called Aradon, a desert of endless storms. From orbit, it looked like a sea of shifting sand, whipped by winds so fierce they carved deep scars across the land. Many envoys had failed to survive here. Some never returned. It was said that Aradon showed no mercy, even to the strongest of species. Darren stood on the transport platform as the ship hovered above the planet. The heat rising from the sands below made the air shimmer like fire. Around him, other champions from alien races prepared for the same test. Each one carried strange tools or natural gifts: wings, claws, armored hides. They looked at Darren with mocking eyes, whispering in their own tongues. To them, the lone human seemed already beaten. Lady Vera's voice came through the communicator before the drop. Remember, Darren. The test is not only to survive but to endure with purpose. Many will try to outlast the storm with brute strength. You must show another way. He said nothing, but her words settled deep in his mind. The signal rang. In a flash of light, Darren and the others were transported down to the surface. The desert hit him at once. The heat burned against his skin, and the wind stung like needles. Sand swirled around him, blinding and suffocating. He pulled his scarf tight across his mouth and narrowed his eyes against the storm. The trial had begun. Each champion scattered across the land, seeking shelter or resources. Darren moved quickly, not wasting time on pride. He searched the dunes until he found a rocky ridge, where the wind was weaker. There he began to build. He used stones to anchor a shelter, layering sand against it for insulation. With scraps from his emergency pack, he shaped a cover to block the worst of the storm. His work was not grand, but it was clever, built with patience rather than force. Hours passed. The sun blazed, and the storms grew harsher. Darren rationed his water carefully, sipping only enough to keep moving. He dug small pits to trap moisture from the air at night. His hands blistered, his throat burned, but he pressed on. From the observation hall on Lumerus, the envoys watched. A great display showed the champions' progress. The armored beasts fought the storm head-on, pushing forward with strength. The winged beings tried to rise above the dunes, though many were driven down by the fierce winds. And there, on the screen, a single human worked quietly, shaping shelter and using the land itself to survive. Some envoys scoffed. "He hides behind stones," one said. "That is no strength." But others watched closely. "He bends the land to his will. He makes weakness into endurance," another whispered. Days passed on Aridon. One by one, the other champions faltered. The storms broke their defenses. Some called for withdrawal, unable to continue. Yet Darren remained, his small shelter standing firm. Each night he studied the stars above, using their movement to guide his path. By day he traveled carefully, never wasting energy, always seeking the next ridge or shadow. At last, the trial reached its final stage. The survivors were ordered to reach a marked point in the desert, many miles away. The heat was merciless, and the winds tore at their every step. Darren set out before dawn, moving while the air was still cool. He marked his path with small stones, ensuring he would not circle back. His pace was steady, his breaths measured. He refused to rush, for rushing meant collapse. As the sun rose high, he stumbled, his legs heavy. His lips cracked, and his water was nearly gone. Yet he remembered Earth, the deserts of his own world, the explorers who had crossed them with nothing but grit. He thought of his people, waiting in silence as the galaxy judged them. He could not fail. Step by step, he pushed forward. When at last he saw the shining beacon of the goal, his vision blurred with exhaustion, but his resolve did not break. With the final strength of his body, he crossed the line. The trial was over. From the great hall, silence followed. Many who had doubted now stared in quiet respect. The human had not been the strongest, nor the fastest, but he had endured where others had fallen. Lady Vera rose, her voice calm but strong. "You see now. The strength of humanity is not in their size, but in their spirit. Where others fall, they rise. Where storms rage, they endure." Darren stood at the beacon, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. He had survived Aridon. The first trial was complete, and the eyes of the galaxy saw him not as fragile but as unbroken. After the grueling trial on Aridon, Darren returned to the observation halls of Lumerus. The council watched closely, impressed by his endurance and determination. Whispers filled the corridors. Aliens who had doubted humanity now wondered if humans might truly belong among the galaxy's leaders. But Darren had no time to celebrate. The next challenge awaited, the trial of mind. The chamber for this trial was unlike any he had seen. It was enormous, circular, with walls of transparent crystal that displayed data, maps, and strange symbols. In the center stood a complex machine, its purpose unclear to anyone unfamiliar with advanced Lumerian technology. Around it sat two delegations, leaders of rival planets, their faces tense. Darren stepped forward, flanked by his team. The council leader spoke clearly. This trial will test logic, diplomacy, and leadership. You must mediate between these two factions, resolve their dispute, and reach a solution that leaves both parties satisfied. Many have failed. Few have succeeded. The rival leaders stared at Darren with skepticism. Both had long histories of conflict, their disputes rooted in territory, resources, and honor. Their voices clashed immediately as Darren approached. "Why should we listen to a human?" one asked. Its voice was sharp and rattling. "You are small, inexperienced, and naive. This council should have sent someone worthy." Darren met the leader's gaze calmly. "I may be new to this, but I am here to find a solution that works for all. I am not your enemy. I am your mediator." The room erupted into arguments, voices overlapping. Symbols on the machine flashed in different colors, displaying facts, claims, and historical records. Darren studied them carefully. He realized the key was not to push his own ideas but to guide both sides toward common ground. He began by asking simple questions, letting each leader explain their needs and fears. As they spoke, he listened more than he spoke. When one claimed an advantage, he showed data from the machine that revealed shared resources. When the other demanded security, he suggested ways to create mutual protection without offense. Hours passed, and tension remained high. Other envoys watched in awe. No one expected a human to hold patience against such strong personalities and deep-rooted conflicts. Some whispered that Darren's calm and logic were as sharp as any weapon. Finally, Darren proposed a compromise. He suggested shared territories, joint resource management, and regular councils to prevent future disputes. It was not perfect, but it allowed both sides to claim victory while avoiding war. The rival leaders paused, considering. There were murmurs, nods, and cautious glances. One of them, the taller with golden eyes, finally spoke. "Your solution is acceptable. Perhaps even wise." The other, smaller, and covered in blue scales, added slowly, "It is better than fighting. Humans, you think differently than we do. It is strange, but it works." A wave of silence filled the chamber. Darren exhaled softly. He had not only solved the problem but had shown a quality the aliens rarely saw: creative thinking that balanced logic and empathy. Lady Vera appeared on the observation panel, her glow soft but proud. "See what I said," she whispered to those watching. "Humans do not fight only with strength. They fight with mind, with patience, with unity. They find paths others overlook." The council leader rose. "The trial of mind is complete. Darren of Earth has succeeded where others have failed. He has shown understanding, patience, and creativity. The council acknowledges this achievement." Applause and murmurs filled the chamber. Some envoys nodded in respect. Others remained skeptical, but even they could not deny the human success. Darren felt a quiet satisfaction. The trial had been more than about cleverness, it had been about patience, careful listening, and finding connections where others saw only conflict. These were the strengths of his people, strengths rarely measured by power or size. As he left the chamber, his team congratulated him, though Darren remained thoughtful. The final trial awaited the greatest challenge of all, uniting rival groups in conflict. It would test not only his mind but his courage, resolve, and the very spirit of humanity. Darren looked up at the stars visible through the massive crystal walls. He knew that what came next would demand everything he had learned and more. Yet for the first time, he also knew that humans were more than capable. The council had seen endurance. They had seen intelligence. Soon, they would see the heart that drove all of humanity forward. The final trial was announced with great ceremony. Darren stood in the center of the vast council hall once more, flanked by the two rival factions he had mediated before. The hall was filled with representatives from countless worlds, all eager to see if humanity could face the ultimate test. This trial was not about strength or intellect alone. It was about unity, leadership, and courage. Darren was tasked with resolving a conflict that had lasted for generations, a struggle over resources and territory that neither side had been able to solve. The council made it clear, the human who could unite these factions would prove that Earth and its people deserved a place among the stars. The two factions were tense as they faced one another. Weapons were at the ready, wings flared, claws flexed, and energy shields hummed softly. Any wrong word could ignite war. The eyes of the galaxy rested on Darren. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. "You have fought for centuries over this land," Darren began, his voice calm but firm. "You both value it, yet neither can prosper in constant conflict. I am not your enemy. I am here to help you see a way forward." The taller faction leader growled, suspicion and pride battling in its eyes. "Why should we listen to a human? You know nothing of our struggles." Darren nodded. "I may not know your history in full, but I know what humans understand. We survive because we learn from each other. We survive because we find solutions when strength alone fails." The smaller faction hissed. "Words are easy. Actions are hard. Prove that your ideas can last where ours cannot." Darren turned to the council's display panels. He traced maps of the contested territories, highlighting natural resources, trade routes, and population centers. "If we divide these lands carefully, you can both gain what you need," he said. "I will propose a system where resources are shared, trade is fair, and both sides can monitor agreements to prevent disputes." He spoke not as a ruler, but as a mediator. He asked each leader to voice their concerns, patiently listening, acknowledging fears, and adapting solutions. Hours passed as negotiations continued, tension rising and falling like a storm. Darren's mind worked constantly, but he never lost patience. He stayed calm when voices grew loud and hands reached for weapons. At last, he offered the final plan: a joint council, shared territories, and rotating leadership over the resources. It was a compromise, but one that allowed both factions to claim victory and safety. The hall fell silent. The alien leaders studied one another, then turned to Darren. One by one, the factions nodded. The taller leader lowered its weapon. "Perhaps, this human solution works," it said quietly. The smaller faction exhaled, relaxing its stance. "We can live with this. Humans, you have taught us something new." From the observation balcony, Lady Vera's silver glow shone brighter than ever. She spoke softly, almost to herself. See now. Humans do not only endure. They think, they adapt, they bring peace when all else fails. That is the strength of your kind. The council leader rose, a look of respect on his face. The final trial is complete. Darren of Earth has succeeded where others might have failed. He has shown endurance, intellect, and the ability to unite even the most stubborn factions. Humanity is recognized among the stars. A wave of applause and murmurs of astonishment spread through the hall. Envoys who had doubted the human now bowed in acknowledgement. Some whispered of Earth's courage. Others nodded in admiration, realizing that strength could come in many forms. Darren felt exhaustion settle into his body, yet a sense of accomplishment warmed him. He had carried the weight of his people and not faltered. He had faced storms, tests of mind, and the greatest challenge of all, bringing peace where none thought it possible. Lady Vera approached him, her expression proud. You have shown the galaxy the truth I have always known. Humans are more than they appear. You carry a spirit that cannot be ignored. Darren bowed respectfully. Thank you. I only did what my people taught me to endure, to think, and to act with honor. The council leader smiled. Let this day be remembered. Let the galaxy know that humans are not to be underestimated. They may be small in number, but their spirit and courage are unmatched. For the first time, Darren felt truly seen. Humanity's place among the stars was no longer uncertain. The trials had ended, but the story of humans as a force of resilience, wisdom, and unity had only just begun. As he looked out over the council hall, Darren understood that this was more than a victory. It was a new beginning, not just for him, but for all of humanity. The eyes of the galaxy now watched, not with doubt, but with respect.